This week on Arizona Illustrated, Barrios and Barriers.
We are Mexicanos, and we have a right to be first-class citizens.
The pride of Arizona plays the Super Bowl.
Just amazing, and the excitement was there.
Tucson Creative Dance.
We are creating something right at that moment together.
And Arizona profiles Vietnam veterans. Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. Throughout the show tonight, we'll be sharing the stories of 3 Vietnam veterans from our Arizona Profile series. But first, we look back at the late 1960s when protests against the Vietnam War grew more intense and widespread throughout the country. In Tucson, many of those protests intertwined with civil rights struggles that had been going on here for decades. Racism and anti-Semitism were practiced both subtly and overtly. For many Tucsonans, barriers to equality were encountered at every turn. Some of the most blatant discrimination occurred in public venues. These interviews were recorded in 2010 and 2011.
At the Fox Theater, we had what is known as the crow's nest, that we would sit in the top 3 rows. And all my white friends, we would meet and go to the downstairs at the popcorn stand. Then I'd go upstairs, and they'd all stay on the first floor, and then we would meet afterwards.
They all went upstairs, all of them, every single one of them, and we had to sit downstairs. But I remember if you went to the Mexican theater, the plaza, there was no segregation.
There were places we couldn't go, and we knew that we couldn't go, and we didn't attempt to go. They didn't have any signs up saying that this is, no blacks allowed, or no Negroes allowed, or no African Americans allowed. It was just an unwritten law.
The Chinese were not allowed in certain clubs, but the Chinese were very cohesive. Very cohesive. We never knew that anybody was different until we started, little by little realizing that he couldn't buy property, we couldn't get married.
Many of the discriminatory practices, such as barring interracial marriages, were written into Arizona law. Other forms of racism were not bound by statutes, but were no less harmful.
But I couldn't get an interview with any firm in Tucson. Again, it's a Jewish-sounding name, and there were no Jewish lawyers who were employed by any of those firms. Nobody said, "Well, you're Jewish and we can hire." But it was remarkable I couldn't get an interview because I graduated first in the class.
No one got up and said, "We hate Jews." You just don't act the same with them. You keep them from housing, and you don't hire them. And that subtle persuasion, that underground attitude of hate worked all the time.
The residents of some of Tucson's oldest communities, the Barrios, suffered many levels of discrimination.
There was, a limit as to what kind of jobs were the Mexican jobs, what jobs were for blacks, and so forth. So certainly economically, it was very clear. You could also see the difference in where, in the segregated neighborhoods, unpaved streets, often outhouses, services that were available in other areas of Tucson, were not available in these neighborhoods. The poverty was an economic factor in our lives, but we had a very rich life with our neighbors and all the people who were around us.
The diversity of neighborhoods was controlled by legal real estate documents called CC&Rs, Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. These barred non-white, non-Christian families from buying property in certain areas. Many individuals acted to change these and other discriminatory laws.
If people hadn't been willing to protest, to fight about it, to do something about it, I don't know how long it would have continued. My parents were willing to move into Kelowna Solana, even if they were going to have a fight and to go to court over the subdivision restrictions. We didn't have this kind of thing in our home. I mean, I sort of was brought up with the idea that everybody, you judge them by what they are, who they are, not by how they look or how they dress or where they go to services or church or synagogue or whatever it is.
While change began with individuals and families, it took communities to bring about lasting change. Change not just to boundaries and infrastructure, but to the psyche as well.
But not only was it in terms of material things that were important, because it led to better health, better educated individuals, but that it also led to a psychic sense of knowing we are, Mexicanos, and we have a right to be first-class citizens, and we have a right to call ourselves Mexicanos. That's our history, that's our culture, but we're also U.S. citizens, and we have a right to have that sense of ourselves. So I think that kind of community, communal, and individual, liberation was very key.
Whether by individual acts, public protests, or through the courts, discrimination in Tucson has changed over the last half-century. But for some people, the change falls short.
Oh, I'd say that we have made great progress, but we still have a long way to go, because there are still some situations in which there is failure to accept all people.
Federico Tapia was born in Agua Prieta, Mexico, and came to Arizona when he was 15. Though he couldn't speak any English and never attended school here, he was drafted into the Army in 1969. Soon he found himself ferried by helicopter into combat deep in the Vietnamese jungle.
Like every month, we went to the base, to the camp, and we used to have a good time, get drunk and everything. And what happened, they called us out to go to the field, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And to be honest, I was halfway drunk when they pulled us out, to the base, to the field. And I told a friend of mine, to one of the soldiers, I said, hey, I'm just gonna lay behind that bush right there, wake me up if we move out. I think I woke up about 7:30 or 8 in the morning, and I was all by myself and up in on top of the hill. And when I didn't see anybody, I kind of, what's going on, I just started, I don't know what I'm going to do, So the first thing that came to my mind, and I can swear right now, that they're not going to catch me alive. I'm going to kill myself right now. So I grabbed my M16, put it in my mouth. When I was going to pull the trigger, I heard like a baby cry. And I said, wait a minute, what am I doing? I can survive. I was taught how to survive. And I just kind of, when I heard the baby, where's a baby in the jungle? Only God knows what's going on. You know what? I don't know. So I just said, thank you, for not doing it, or not letting me do it. Like I said, where can you hear a baby cry in the jungle? I said, God wants me alive. And that's what happened, I guess. But it was very scary that particular day.
On January 15, 1967, at Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs faced off in the AFL-NFL World Championship game, now known as the first Super Bowl. The national anthem and the halftime show were performed by the Pride of Arizona, the University of Arizona marching band.
We got there, which was great. The forte piano entrances were terrible. Trombones, you have one job, you know it. It's late. It's almost always just a little bit late.
It's Saturday morning on game day, and the University of Arizona marching band, known as the Pride of Arizona, is practicing for tonight's performance. Football season is here. Achieving the right sound requires precision.
That was excellent musically. Thank you.
There are high expectations for this group of musicians.
Same rep. Keep pushing. Let's go.
So the goal is still the same, to be the best marching band in the country and do innovative things, creative things, high-value entertainment things for the crowd. One of the things that I think helped me coming from Disney is appreciating the value of a quality performance, but also creating an experience for people that come to the campus. We want them to have a game day experience.
And that experience is built from the ground up through excellent musicianship, personal performance, and emotional connection with the fans in the stands. One of the instruments most often associated with marching bands is the trumpet.
And it does have a brassy type of sound. It's the predominant sound you hear when you're out listening to a band. You'll hear the trumpets all the time. And trumpets love to play out loud, so they like to be heard.
Larry Paxton is a trumpet player and has played in bands since 3rd grade. He also played for the U of A marching band while he was a student.
I don't practice as much as I used to. In college, of course, we played every day, so. My major was math with a minor in physics and systems engineering. It was kind of the precursor to what would be computer sciences.
For Paxton, playing music was a welcome distraction from a rigorous academic life.
I'm primarily a geek, and it was a kind of a way of getting out of my geekness to experience the other side of my brain as well. Also helped me be more disciplined. It was a good foundation for me, and I'm thankful that I've had the experience to have music in my life.
He's now a member of the Pride of Arizona Alumni Band, comprised of former U of A band members, a multi-generational group of musicians who love to play. They're here on campus, also practicing for tonight's game.
1, 2.
Another member of the band, Ray Martinez. He was a music education major and plays the D-flat piccolo.
It's a little shorter, a little sharper, brighter sound. You could just really hear that thing. I love music, yeah. We're going to be playing music for the tailgaters, and then follow the Pride into the stadium afterwards, and then play some rah-rah music.
Now known as the Pride of Arizona, back then they had a different nickname.
Then it was known as the best band in the West under Jack Lee.
Best in the West, that was our big saying, yes, best in the West.
Came across here,
Larry Paxton and Ray Martinez are friends and have a lot in common.
And we started marching, and that pig just stayed there.
Both are musicians, about the same age, and in 1967, both were sophomores when they found out they'd be playing in the first Super Bowl.
Found out about it through our band director, Jack Lee. He was considered one of the great innovators of marching bands. It was really kind of a surprise. We didn't really know that we were going to be playing in the Super Bowl. We enjoyed the University of Arizona football games, and we know what football was, but it's still hard to relate to what a professional football championship was all about, how important it really was. So there was a lot of pressure, but on the other hand, it's just another day at the park. You've done it 1,000 times in rehearsals, and you just got to go out there and do it right.
On January 15, 1967, when the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs faced off in the AFL-NFL championship game, now known as the first Super Bowl. The game was played at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum.
At that time, considered one of the 3 top bands in the United States. We were the closest ones to Los Angeles, which is where it was held, and so it made kind of economic sense. because we were in Greyhound buses, and so we didn't have a whole lot of room. We had our instruments and ourselves, and so he said, pack light, change of underwear, bring your toothbrush. When we got there, we practiced at a couple of different high school stadiums where we practiced a halftime show. We never knew quite what was going to happen, but we knew we were going to find some way to have a good time and play hard and do our best. One day at rehearsal, another band showed up. It was the Grambling Band. They really just did the pregame show with us. And so we looked forward to meeting with the Grambling people.
We admired them because they had a neat drum section, you know. Oh God, was that unbelievable. I think I remember every moment. It's just walking into Coliseum there, you walk through a tunnel and then you go onto that field. The amount of people that were there was just amazing, you know, just amazing. And the excitement was there.
I look back on it, it was a great time in my life, and it was certainly a big part of my growing up. I still have close bonds with many of those people from the years. Lifelong friendships are formed as a result of being in the band. It would have been true whether we went to the Super Bowl or not.
Large numbers of Arizona's wartime veterans have come from small towns. Bernardo Jordan had 5 uncles who fought in the Pacific during World War II. They were a big influence on his decision to enlist.
I was born and raised here in Douglas, Arizona, 1950. And we grew up here in a patriotic environment here in Douglas, you know. And it was your duty to go and serve your country, you know, because that was my dad's generation and my uncles. The recruiting, the naval recruiters and the army recruiters and, you know, the military recruiters would be at the old post office. It's still there. So I was going by there and they had their doors open. So I went downstairs and he asked me how old I was and I told him I just turned 17, you know. Well, he says, well, you gotta go get your parents to sign a release form so we can join the military. And so I got my parents' signature, and I only got 2 signatures from these other people, and I figured to go ask this good friend of mine, his dad. I figured to go ask for his dad's signature, and I didn't realize at the time that he was a Korean veteran. And he probably, you know, he was very quiet. He probably saw some combat. I never asked him. I never got to talk to him about that. And so he told me that he wasn't going to sign the paper. And I told him, Mr. Zroni, I go, if you don't do it, I told him, Mr. Zroni, I'll just go down the street right here and I'll find somebody else that will sign this paperwork for me. And so the gentleman came back when I guess he had went and thought about it. But he came back in tears. And he signed my paperwork. The only time I'd maybe been out of Douglas is to go to Phoenix, you know, but we never left the state, you know. And so I went into the military, spent my basic training there at Fort Bliss, Texas. After I finished basic training, they sent me to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, in the middle of the United States. The only time I'd ever seen Oklahoma was on the maps, you know. But they said you can't go to Vietnam until you turn 18. Okay, so I spent 18 months there in Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
In 1963, modern dance pioneer Barbara Mettler founded Mettler Studios at the Tucson Creative Dance Center. She referred to body movement as a universal language, one in which all people everywhere could express themselves and understand each other. It is still practiced today, the art and language of movement.
Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to our studio. We're very happy to show you this afternoon some creative dancing Creative dancing, as we practice it here in this studio, is something which everyone can do because you make up your own movements.
What do you think about the fact that it's been in Tucson for so long?
It's amazing, and yet it's not that well known.
She is the only dance pioneer who really has the analytical mind to leave a body of work that anyone can use.
Will you all make stretching movements now, just the way you feel? Waking up your muscles, waking up the whole body.
We have a weekly dance improvisation group that gathers at Tucson Creative Dance Center, and we create dances together every Saturday morning. No one knows what's going to happen, and we have to be very tuned into each other so that whatever seems like it needs to happen can take place.
We're always concerned with feeling in dance. Not just movement, but feeling of the movement.
She really was such a genius in creating this approach. It's so, in a way, very simple yet profound at the same time.
Barbara was very influenced in the direction she took as an artist when she was a young adult by studying at the Bauhaus in Germany. It's definitely modernist, yes. And yet at the same time it has an ancient quality to it.
It's fun to express yourself freely in sound and movement.
Dance has always been associated with music. So as soon as somebody hears, you know, that you're a dancer, well, what do you like to dance to? But Barbara separated music from dance, and there is no other teacher in the world that I know of who has done that. That doesn't mean that their sound isn't involved, but the sound needs to come from being created at the same time as the dance.
It's easy to make your own music if you just let the sound come out of your movement.
I was looking for something a little bit different, and I stumbled into this class, and it changed my life. From that first class, I decided to really concentrate and focus my training on this Mettler-based approach to dance. I love the spontaneity of it, and I love the fact that we are creating something right at that moment together.
I love the fact that we don't know what's going to happen, and we have to be that tuned in. It feels the way art should feel. I mean, I always wish that paintings could move and change.
You are a moving force. You can move anything and anybody that is anywhere near you. You can move mountains. Be a moving force. Push, pull, lift up.
When we're dancing in the studio, we're creating art, and yet we're carrying that with us as we leave the studio, and it affects how we live our lives.
It's a great release and a sense of just tuning into each other in a way that we don't often get a chance to do.
That is unique, and who knows whether there'll ever be anybody that'll be a teacher that she was. It's truly amazing.
Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix trained fighter pilots during the Vietnam War. Russell Violet received 6 months of training there, and in 1965 was sent to fly combat missions in Vietnam.
In those days, everybody trained for nuclear missions, and conventional missions were secondary, and you didn't spend a lot of time doing it. But about 6 months before we deployed, we didn't know we were going to deploy. The emphasis turned from the nuclear training to conventional training, so we spent a lot more time dive bombing and skip bombing and strafing and that sort of thing, and firing air-to-surface missile systems. That one thing led to another. My first duty assignment in Vietnam was actually in Thailand in the 1965 time period. We lost our first guy the second day we were there. We lost 6 guys out of the 20 pilots that were deployed in that 4-month deployment. The war came home to rest very, very quickly, so you knew that mistakes ended in other than happy ways. So I got 56 missions in that particular area, and some were very, very painful, others were just very routine and non-eventful. We attacked one target in 27th of July 1965, first time a surface-to-air missile site was attacked. We had 28 aircraft on the attack. We lost 6 of them that day on that attack. We were attacking with ordnance that had not been tested. They were sent it out and told us to use it against the target. And that ordnance, when it came out of the tubes on the dispensers on the outboard wings, the impact of the hitting the air caused that cluster to explode. So some of those aircraft that I talked about being lost were the result of your own ordnance going off and going through your tail section of your aircraft. That was a tough mission.
What are your memories of the Vietnam War? Maybe you or someone close to you served, or maybe it impacted your life in a different way. Share your story with us by visiting our website, azpm.org/Vietnam. Watch the new AZPM original documentary, Arizona and the Vietnam War, crafted from the personal stories of those who served in that war that defined a generation. Premiering Sunday, September 17th at 7 p.m. and times throughout the week on PBS 6. Also, a 10-part, 18-hour film series, The Vietnam War, on PBS 6. Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. See you next week.